There is a mystery hidden in plain sight, a truth as ancient as Genesis and as vital as this very hour. It has been whispered to the prophets, revealed in the Scriptures, and declared by the Spirit to those who have ears to hear. We are not called merely to observe the plans of God. We are not summoned to be spectators of redemption or witnesses to divine wonders from the safety of distance. No, we are called to walk in the holy fire, to build with heavenly blueprints, to plow where the earth has been hardened, to speak where silence has reigned, and to move in rhythm with the heartbeat of God Himself. From the beginning, the Creator formed man from the dust and gave him the garden not as a trophy, but as a task. Tend it, guard it, subdue the earth. It was laboring even then, and when man fell even then, the divine purpose did not die. The Lord moved not to work alone, but to redeem through man, to partner once more. Noah built the ark, not the angels. Moses stretched forth the staff, not a seraph. Gideon tore down the altar, not a cherubim. The Lord moves through those willing to walk with Him, work with Him, war with Him. But here's the mystery. God doesn't need us, yet He chooses us. He is the Almighty, the Eternal, the Sovereign, who spoke worlds into being. Yet He calls the weak, the wounded, the willing to rise up and labor in His vineyard, to stand on the wall, to fight the battles, to carry the word, to build the altar. And the call today is no different. This hour is not an hour for passivity. It is an hour for alignment. An hour to say, "Here I am, send me." It is not enough to admire His works. You were born to be a part of them. Not tomorrow, now, not after you're perfect, but because He makes perfect that which is yielded. There is a great harvest before us. There is ground to be broken, walls to be rebuilt, lives to be reached. And the Lord is seeking those who will not shrink back, who will not wait for ideal conditions, who will dare to labor with the living God. It is not a position, it is a posture, not a title, but a testimony. The same power that raised Messiah from the grave lives within you. And if you have been redeemed, then you have been recruited. The fields are white. The Spirit is stirring. The Lord of the harvest is calling. Will you co-labor with Him? To walk as a co-laborer with the Lord, one must first step into the sacred realm of consecration. It is not a suggestion. It is the foundation. Before any mission, before any ministry, before the harvest is touched or the battle engaged, the soul must be set apart. Consecration is not a ritual. It is a surrender. It is the moment when the heart is laid bare before the Holy One, when every other desire is dethroned, and the will of God becomes the one and only pursuit. It is not about external perfection, but inward purity. It is the fire that prepares the vessel. The Lord does not send the unyielded. He calls them first to the altar. In the Scriptures, those who became instruments of God's purpose were always first brought to a place of sanctification. Moses encountered the burning bush, but before he could receive his assignment, he was told to take off his sandals, for the ground was holy. It was a declaration. You cannot walk into this calling with the dust of Egypt on your feet. Isaiah was a prophet in title, but he could not truly speak for God until the coal from the altar touched his lips. Gideon was called a mighty warrior, but he had to tear down the altar of Baal in his father's house before he could lead the army of the Lord. Consecration is the setting apart of a life not just from sin but for God. It is a holy separation, a spiritual dividing line. It is the realization that you no longer belong to yourself. Your dreams, your agenda, your plans, they are no longer yours to manage. They are placed in the hands of the King. It is the act of offering not just your Sunday worship, but your Monday labor. Not just your words, but your wounds, not just your spirit, but your schedule. Everything is laid on the altar. This is not easy. The flesh resists the fire. The world mocks the sacred. But it is only in this surrender that authority is birthed. You cannot wield what you have not submitted to. You cannot carry the mantle if your heart is divided. The Spirit will not fill a temple cluttered with idols. The Lord is holy, and those who walk with him must walk in holiness. Not legalism, not religion, but the holiness that flows from intimacy, from knowing him, from desiring him more than the stage, more than the platform, more than the affirmation of man. From the beginning of creation to the climactic work of redemption, the divine pattern has always been one of partnership. The God who formed the heavens and the earth by the word of his mouth chose not to operate in isolation, but in union with humanity. In Eden, he created Adam not merely to exist, but to work, to tend, to govern, to name. Man was not placed in the garden to watch passively, but to participate in its cultivation. God gave him dominion, a share in his authority, and called him into a role of stewardship. The Creator of all chose to involve the created in the unfolding of his purpose. This was not by necessity, it was by divine desire. Even after the fall, when sin shattered the intimacy of the garden, the pattern of partnership did not end. It shifted, but it did not cease. God called Noah not just to survive the flood, but to build the ark. The Lord could have spoken an ark into existence, yet he allowed a man to labor in wood and pitch for over a century. He called Abraham not simply to receive a blessing, but to become the father of a nation through which the entire world would be touched. He entered into covenant with him, a binding partnership that would echo through generations. When Israel was enslaved in Egypt, the Lord did not send an angel to confront Pharaoh. He called Moses. The bush burned, the voice spoke, but the feet that would walk into Pharaoh's courts were human. The miracles were divine, but the obedience required was earthly. Joshua led the armies, Deborah judged the people. David wielded the sling. Every story of deliverance and destiny flowed through partnership. Heavens will move through earth's hands. The prophets did not stand apart from God's work. They were vessels of his word. The Lord put his voice in their mouths, his burden in their hearts, his fire in their bones. And when the time of fulfillment came, the greatest partnership of all was revealed. The Word became flesh. God did not send a thunderbolt of salvation from the clouds. He came himself, but he came through a virgin womb, through human flesh, through a life lived among men. He walked, he wept, he worked, and even in his mission he called disciples. He could have preached alone, but he chose to multiply his voice through men. He could have revealed the kingdom with angels, but he entrusted it to fishermen, tax collectors, and zealots. And at the cross, the highest act of redemption, Jesus bore the weight alone. But for the sake of partnership, he reconciled us not just to save us, but to restore us to purpose, to bring us back into alignment with our original design, co-laborers with God. The cross was not the end of partnership. It was the restoration of it. Now the Spirit indwells not to entertain, but to empower. The church is his body, his bride, his laborer. From Eden to the cross, and from the cross to now, the divine pattern has remained unbroken. God works with man, and through man, to fulfill his will on earth. You are not redeemed to sit in the stands. You were not born again to be an observer of spiritual things. In the kingdom of God, there are no spectators, only vessels. You were not saved to admire the work of others, or to applaud the victories of saints from a distance. You were called to be filled, to be poured out, to be used. A vessel carries, a vessel holds, a vessel moves with the hand of the one who holds it. And you, if you belong to him, are a chosen vessel, set apart, not for decoration, but for divine purpose. Too many sit as if the work of the kingdom belongs to the few, the ordained, the titled. But in the eyes of God, every believer is ordained. Every disciple is sent. Every follower is called. The Spirit was not given to a class of elite ministers. It was poured out on all flesh. Sons and daughters, young and old, servants and handmaidens. All are meant to prophesy, to move, to manifest the glory of the Lord. You are part of a priesthood, not an audience. A spectator watches revival from afar. A vessel carries revival in their very being. A spectator comments. A vessel acts. A spectator critiques. A vessel intercedes. And when you realize that you were not created to watch, but to carry, everything changes. Your prayers become warfare. Your worship becomes a weapon. Your words become rivers of life. You stop asking, who will go? And begin to say, here am I. Send me. Look through the scriptures. God never used spectators. He called fishermen, tax collectors, shepherds, widows, and servants, ordinary people, who yielded themselves to an extraordinary God. They did not wait to be qualified. They made themselves available. They became vessels of deliverance, of prophecy, of healing, of mercy. Paul called himself a jar of clay, holding within the treasure of Christ. That is the image of your life, not empty, not idle, but carrying the power of the gospel wherever you go. A vessel must be clean, it must be open, and it must be willing. The Lord does not pour into that which is full of the world. He does not use that which is sealed shut by fear or pride. He looks for the empty, the humble, the yielded. And once he finds them, he fills them, not for their own sake, but to be poured out, to a dry world, to a broken soul, to a dying generation. The Spirit of the living God does not seek the most skilled, the most educated, or the most accomplished. He seeks the available. In the kingdom, availability outweighs ability. God is not looking for resumes. He is looking for surrender. He does not search for the polished, the perfected, or the prominent. He searches for the one who will say yes, even when they feel unqualified. It has never been about what you bring in your hands, but about whether your hands are open. It has never been about your talent, but your trust. The vessels God uses are not the most impressive. They are the most yielded. Throughout the Word, this pattern is consistent. When God called Moses, he was not eloquent, he was not bold, he was hesitant, afraid, and uncertain. Yet the Lord chose him because he was available. When Samuel heard the voice in the night, he did not yet know the Lord deeply, but he responded, "Speak, for your servant is listening." That simple availability opened the door to prophetic authority. David was not the tallest or the strongest among his brothers, but he was available tending sheep in the fields, ready to obey. And when Goliath rose to defy the armies of God, it was David's availability, not his swordsmanship, that made him the Lord's instrument. Even in the new covenant, this truth is unchanged. When the angel appeared to Mary, she was a young girl with no credentials, no status, and no platform. But she answered, "Let it be to me according to your word." That availability ushered in the incarnation. The disciples were fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, untrained, unrefined, yet called. Why? Because they dropped their nets and followed. They didn't have the ability to feed the 5,000 or heal the sick or preach to the nations. But they had one thing, availability. And that was enough. The Spirit moves through those who make room. When you try to impress God with your strength, you hinder His power. But when you offer your weakness, He fills it with glory. When Paul said, "I will boast in my weakness," he was declaring the secret. God's power is made perfect in what man sees as insufficient. The greatest miracles are birthed not from strength, but from surrender. The greatest revivals have come not from mighty men, but from available hearts. To walk with God is not to stroll through life in ease and comfort. It is to take a stand in the midst of resistance. It is to walk against the flow of a fallen world. The moment you align yourself with the purposes of heaven, you become a target for the forces of darkness. This is the cost of walking with God. You are no longer at peace with the systems, the values, and the spirit of the age. The world that once embraced you will now resist you. What once felt natural becomes foreign. What once brought comfort now brings conviction. To walk with God is to live in tension with the world, because light and darkness do not walk hand in hand. From the beginning, those who walked closely with God became enemies of the world. Abel walked in righteousness, and the world responded with murder. Noah walked with God, and the world mocked him for a century. Abraham left the safety of Ur to dwell in tents as a stranger, not just in geography, but in spirit. The closer they drew to God, the further they moved from the ways of men. Elijah stood alone on Mount Carmel. Jeremiah was thrown into a pit. Daniel was cast into a den. The apostles were imprisoned, beaten, and martyred. Why? Because the walk of obedience is a declaration of war against the dominion of darkness. Jesus himself said it clearly, "If the world hates you, remember that it hated me first." You cannot be a friend of the world and a servant of God. There is no neutrality in the kingdom. The closer you walk with the holy, the more you will offend the unholy. The Spirit of God within you will convict what is around you. Your purity will challenge their compromise. Your joy will confront their despair. Your obedience will expose their rebellion. The world will not applaud your righteousness. It will resist it. It always has. But this is not a call to fear. This is a call to courage. Because every battle you face while walking with God is a battle He has already equipped you to win. You do not war alone. You walk with the captain of hosts. The one who overcame the world lives within you. And though the world may rage, his peace remains. Though the enemy may strike, his hand protects. Though rejection may come, his favor is eternal. You were not called to blend in, you were called to stand out. Not to conform, but to be transformed. Not to be liked, but to be light. Your walk with God is your witness, and your war with the world is the evidence that you are walking in step with heaven. So do not shrink back, do not compromise to gain acceptance. You were never meant to fit in, you were meant to overcome. And in every battle, every trial, every resistance you are not defeated. You are walking in the footsteps of the saints. You are walking with God, and that walk, though costly, leads to eternal glory. A co-laborer with the Lord is not one who waits for perfect conditions or stands still until everything is clear. He builds when others hesitate. He plows when the ground is hard. He moves when others are standing still. The kingdom of God is not advanced by those who are passive, but by those who are purposeful. Heaven does not partner with indecision. The Spirit does not breathe upon apathy. The harvest is not gathered by the ones who wait, but by those who move. A co-laborer understands that delay is often disobedience in disguise. He doesn't wait for the clouds to part. He moves at the sound of God's voice. When Nehemiah heard of the broken walls of Jerusalem, he did not wait for someone more qualified. He wept, he prayed, and then he built. He faced opposition, mockery, threats, but he kept his hand on the plow and his eyes on the mission. The wall was rebuilt because someone refused to wait. In the days of Elijah, when the fire of God fell on Mount Carmel, It did not fall upon silence. It came after the altar was built, after the sacrifice was laid, after the prayer was spoken. Fire follows action. Glory follows obedience. The move of God follows movement toward God. Jesus called his disciples with 2 words, follow me. Not study me, not sit and admire me, follow. It was a call to action. Peter stepped out of the boat. Matthew left the tax booth. Paul ran toward the regions beyond. They did not have full understanding, but they had full surrender. They did not have every answer, but they had a burning yes. The early church did not wait for comfort. They preached in persecution, worshipped in prison, and spread the gospel across the Roman Empire in the face of death. They moved because the Spirit within them compelled action. A co-laborer does not sit and count the obstacles. He trusts the one who called him. To be a co-laborer is to live in motion. There are seeds to sow, ground to break, walls to raise, and lives to reach. The time for passivity is over. There are prayers to pray, hands to lay, and cities to touch. You cannot wait for revival. You must become it. You cannot wait for another voice. You must be the voice. The Spirit is looking for those who will move without delay, who will obey without negotiation, who will act without excuse. The laborers are few not because God has not called, but because many are still waiting. You were not saved to sit. You were not called to comfort. You were not redeemed to remain still. You were chosen, set apart, and appointed not merely to receive from God, but to labor with Him. The invitation to walk with the Lord is not a passive one. It is a summons to rise, to build, to war, to carry the weight of His purpose on earth. From Eden to the cross, from the prophets to the apostles, the pattern has never changed. God does not work around people. He works through them. And now, in this moment, He calls you to join that divine pattern, to stop watching and start working, to stop waiting and start walking. You are called to be a co-laborer with the Lord of glory. The call begins not with action, but with consecration. You cannot build with clean hands if your heart remains divided. You cannot carry the presence if you are still clinging to the world. The fire of God does not fall on the careless. It falls on the surrendered. When you yield yourself, when you come to the altar with no agenda but His will, He begins to shape you, cleanse you, and fill you. And from that place of surrender flows everything else. He has never sought the strongest, only the surrendered. He does not need your strength. He asks for your yes. If you will be available, He will be powerful. If you will be yielded, He will be sovereign through you. You are not too small. You are not too broken. You are not too late. All He asks is that you step out of the crowd and into the field. The Spirit is moving, but He is looking for someone to move through. And as you walk with Him, you will feel the friction of the world. You will see the battle lines drawn. To walk with God is to walk in opposition to the spirit of this age. It will cost you comfort, reputation, perhaps relationships, but it will gain you everything that is eternal. Heaven never partners with compromise. It partners with courage, with those who dare to be different, who dare to be holy, who dare to obey when no one else will. The time is now. The harvest is ready. The night is far spent. The Lord is not calling spectators. He is calling laborers. Those who will not wait for the right moment, but who will move because He has spoken. Those who will build altars, not platforms. Who will sow in tears and reap in joy. Who will preach, pray, fast, serve, and love without needing applause. You were not born into this generation by accident. You were placed here now for purpose. The same Spirit that filled the prophets, that raised Messiah from the grave, that birthed the church in fire, that same Spirit lives within you. So rise, co-laborer, rise, vessel, rise, builder of the kingdom. The fields are white. The Spirit is ready, and the Lord of the harvest is calling your name. Will you answer?